Another edition of the Kevin Moore Show. Now, on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Reverend Patricia. Now, Patricia is CEO and founder of Sacred Stories Media, a conscious online media network. Now, Reverend Patricia is an ordained interfaith, interspiritual minister and a sacred storyteller. She believes it's time to raise the vibration of our planet to one of respect and honor for the sacred nature of ourselves and for all living beings. Now, Reverend Patricia is ordained from One Spirit Interfaith Seminary in New York, and she's earned her Master's of Arts in Education and her Bachelor's of Science in Business. Now, she's worked in the corporate and educational worlds for many years and proudly served 6 years as a sergeant in the U.S. Marine Corps. Now, today's show is sponsored by Sacred Publishing and is offering a 23% discount on all courses that Patricia does by using the code MOORE23. That's MOORE 23. Just see the link in the description or go to learn.sacredstoriesmedia.com, and the code is good until the end of October 2019. And Patricia Caganello, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kevin. So happy to be here.
Thank you for coming on. I hope I pronounced your name right there, your last name.
Yes, you did.
And where does that last name come from?
It's Italian.
It's Italian. Okay. So were you born in Italy?
No, U.S., but my heritage is Italian. Actually, Italian and a little bit of Slovenian as well.
Wow. Okay. You've obviously been back there since?
Several times. Absolutely.
Yeah. Obviously living in America right now, I do miss Europe quite a bit, and I did take it for granted. I will say that. But America's a great place to be, and I know that's where I am meant to be right now, and it's where you've been for all your life. And obviously, this is going to be a fascinating interview on so many different levels for the work that you're doing right now as well. So, where do we start with you? Well, let's just go back in the Wayback Machine to begin with. Now, obviously, what is your background? I mean, where did this interest in this whole, spiritual self come from, in a sense?
Yeah, so I'm one of those people, I used to say I was a little late to the party, but as I continue my spiritual journey, I realize, we all kind of show up right on time. So I have one of those. At the time, I thought it was this earth-shattering, could never happen to another person, and I'm coming to find out that common today, where we have this traumatic or life-changing event in our lives that kind of turn us upside down and inside out, and have us seek or look for some deeper answers. And so for me, it happened the year I turned 50. I was, I say I was the quintessential U.S. middle-aged soccer mom, married, 2 kids, 4 cats and a dog, and just kind of thought life was what it was, pretty mainstream U.S. And until one day that my husband told me, my then husband, who I kind of thought was my person, I thought he was, my forever, said basically just, he didn't love me anymore, and he really couldn't remember when he actually did love me, and pretty much he wanted a divorce. And I was like, what did you just say? Like, I knew it wasn't all hearts and flowers and roses for a little while, but I just thought that's kind of like what marriage was. I thought, it was up and down, and we had just been in a down cycle. So anyway, it was fascinating because I've always been kind of the strong woman, the strong one. I'm a former U.S. Marine Corps sergeant. I've just always kind of been very accomplished. And that sent me right to my knees. I probably spent more time on my bedroom floor, the first few months in a heap of, puddle of sobs, trying to figure stuff out. It was like it just ripped me inside out. And I didn't realize the I say the scabs, came off the wounds. I didn't realize I had so many wounds, to be quite honest, but I guess I did. And I was raised, traditional Roman Catholic, I'm the good Italian girl from the Northeast in the U.S. and very, very deep faith, but it really wasn't enough. It didn't have the answers that I needed, and I needed more. And that's really became the catalyst for my seeking deeper meaning, and the only thing I knew through all of it is that I needed to figure it out, because I knew that innately, I knew that if I didn't figure it out, it was going to repeat itself. I don't know why I knew that or how I knew that. I just knew that I was in it. I was kind of in it to win it at that point, because I couldn't continue at that level of pain.
No, absolutely not. So, I mean, now you've gone through that. I mean, what is love to you? What is love in a relationship?
Wow. Yeah. So, wow. Wow, you really just start off with a bang, don't you, my friend?
I've got no choice.
Like, I don't know. So it's interesting. So for me, I don't know. I mean, it's been 8 years now, and I'm currently not in a relationship, and I think I'm kind of, ready for it. It's not an invitation. I mean, I just think that, I'm ready for it. I've really been working on myself. It's been a personal and it's been a collective journey more than a relationship with like another person. So love for me right now, I think really for the most part is about that really deep, self-valuing, not to be cliche, but self-love. But from self-love, for me, it has been the journey of the one and the many. It's the personal and the collective journey, and they're parallel. And this really been coming to a deeper and deeper understanding of that. So what is love? At this point for me, love is the love for myself, and the love for, really all sentient beings, not even beyond humanity is really what love is for me.
Absolutely. And I guess obviously going through, would you call it a dark night of the soul? I mean, or is that a bit of a new age word for you?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I think that that's maybe one way to describe it. I think it's what I've kind of come to realize, really, from a spiritual perspective. For me, what makes sense is that we just live in a very distracted world, and there's a lot going on, and sometimes we just need our attention caught. I was distracted. I was doing my thing. I was being a mom and going to soccer games and working, and I'm just doing life. And I think that sometimes we just need to, for the universe, not to be cliche, but to kind of grab us by our shoulders and shake us and say, hey, pay attention. And we do that a variety of ways. I think, it's easier to do it in a traumatic event because people pay attention to pain. Some people have illnesses, physical illnesses, mental illnesses, heartbreak. There's a variety of ways that can happen. One of the things that I've been working for, and I'm continuing through Sacred Stories and the work that we do, is having the life-changing opening that pain has been causing, but through joy. Saying, okay, let's get our attention, but we don't necessarily maybe have to do it in a way that's it's ripping our hearts out.
No, there are easier ways than even a near-death experience to have a wakey, wake up, sort of life-changing experience. But obviously, had you not gone through that painful story, do you think that you would never be doing sacred publishing right now? Do you think it would have happened, or not as quick, or?
Oh, it absolutely would not have happened. Since that happened, I'm kind of a forever student. I really need to understand things, and so I'm an ordained interfaith, interspiritual minister now. I went through 2 years of seminary. I really went on the seeker's journey because I needed to understand. I really did. I had to and took a number of different spiritual workshops, courses. I've had incredible experiences. It has been the seeker's journey. So absolutely, if that hadn't happened to me, and it's the only way I can really explain, I think, why, because I say, wow, we're going to compare traumas, maybe why the reasons are almost don't even matter. The thing is that we don't need to compare traumas, but it puts us on a path, or it sets us seeking. And absolutely, my life is completely different than it was 8 years ago.
Yeah, what I mean, you're so much about being of service right now, and we're going to get into sacred publishing and some of the great work that you're doing right now. But I don't know. There's something interesting about, maybe it's just interesting to me, but I'm sure it's interesting to others, about sharing stories and some of the obstacles that you had to get over, and other people do as well. I mean, we're all walking around with some pain, aren't we? In some respects, that we're trying to heal, or we have healed, or there's no finishing goal, is there? Do you know what I mean? In any of this, but we're not alone in that. It's not easy sometimes, is it?
Yeah, no. And you know what? I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's not. Sometimes it's like, and if I signed up for this, like, I don't believe I really signed up for this, but I must have. But no. So what happened with me, though, and I think that what I'd like everyone to hopefully take from any time, if they're listening to this conversation, is that I was the support that came from the universe. The support, it first started coming in the form of the animals. So my story really starts with animal totems. My whole first book, God is in the Little Things, Messages from the Animals, is my unfolding of my story, and the way all these different animals, physical animals, came in my life. I didn't even understand what was happening half the time, and part of it started even before the divorce. I had a total of 3 different bats over the period of a couple years in my bedroom. And, I don't live I lived in suburbia, but not where my entire life have I ever had a bat in my house, let alone in my bedroom. And the bats were not only in my bedroom, they were literally fluttering above my face where I woke up, because I could feel the movement of their wings. It was that, like, for me, right? And where I lived was like a 4-bedroom colonial, which was like on the second floor down the end of the hall. I mean, we don't leave our doors open, windows open for animals to fly in and out. So it started a couple years before even the divorce, and we sleep with the door closed as well. So, it's like 2 a.m. and I'm waking up because I'm feeling a fluttering. And I thought there was a bird in the bedroom. My then husband is sleeping right next to me. The bat's not bothering him. I jump up, I run out of the room. I'm like, there's a bird in here. And he's like, and slam the door. And he's like, it's not a bird. And it was a bat. And that's how the animals started to come. And a bat actually came 3 different times. I mean, my hand to God, 3 different times in my bedroom, again, down the end of the hall, door shut, 2 a.m, waking me up. And twice when we were still married, and once after we got divorced, until I really started understanding, like, whoa, wait a second, there's a message here. Something's happening. I wasn't tuned into the world of animal totems or symbolism or anything like that. I'll tell you just another animal story if you want to hear it, because it's crazy, and it kind of talks about the support, and that's kind of where I was going. The animals showed up to say, hey, pay attention. We have a message for you. There's stuff you need to know, or, and in that knowledge is the support of, wow, if these animals, or the spirits moving through the animals, are going to this much trouble to get my attention, then I must have more value than I think. Like, there's something here, right? I mean, which we all do. The messages that everyone does. I wasn't feeling that I had any value. And the bat, one of the messages of the bat is, transformation, right? Not long after, my then husband, I don't know how else to refer to him. I don't like ex. That just sounds so, I don't know, it's negative. Moved out. It was like a spring morning, and I remember, and I was definitely in a depression, and I remember, again, in the bedroom, and we had one of those high slat beds. So meaning, like, the bottom of the bed was already a couple feet off the floor, and then if you think like the tall, skinny slats is the headboard, and then a tiny little, like, couple inch, head rail at the top of it. So that's what the bed was. And I knew I was sleeping on my side because I was still sleeping on my side. So if anybody's been divorced or in the middle of a breakup, you don't just take over the whole bed as soon as the partner leaves. You just just kind of stayed on my side for a period of time. Eventually I took over the bed. But at this point I was still on my side. So I kind of knew where I slept. And I remember I woke up in the morning and I got up and I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. And I was like, what is going on? And I thought it was a rock. And I turned and I was like, how is there a rock on the top of my headboard? It was directly above where I was sleeping. How is there a rock on the top of my headboard? And I turned to grab it because I was just puzzled and I was half asleep. And it wasn't a rock. It was this giant, it was the craziest thing. It was this giant living, breathing toad, like giant toad sitting there alive, staring at me with his bulging eyes. And so it got in my house, up flights of stairs. It was probably the size of my fist, right? Flights of stairs, was not there when I went to bed. While I was sleeping, it kind of climbed up to my bed, climbed up the slats, and it was literally directly above my head. So when I woke up in the morning, so of course what I do, I started screaming. And because that's what I did whenever the animals seemed to show up. And one of my kids came running and they had to take it out of the house for me. It was alive. And there's another message, obviously, from the animals. And, I write about it all in my first book. But it's actually, Kevin, a little mind blowing, like how when we need it, or when we're ready, or when we just say, I need help, and ask for support, how the universe in so many different ways will show up.
And you started seeing all these signs. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And your first book is?
It's called God is in the Little Things, Messages from the Animals. And it happened. I never expected to be an author. I never expected to be, so it's funny. I didn't even like to write, and let alone write a couple books, and now have a book publishing company. Isn't that crazy how the universe, works? But it happened where it got one of those, crazy download things people talk about one night. Woke up. I had this whole vision of where I was asleep, but I wasn't asleep any longer. And I saw my head, and it was like the top of my head kind of lifted back, kind of like a pot that gets opened up. And I just saw all these numbers and codes and things just get poured into my brain. It was the craziest thing. I was watching it in like this vision, watching it going, this is bizarre. And I woke up the next day and I literally sat in bed for 4 days and I just wrote my whole first book. It was just I couldn't stop writing. It just kept coming through me. I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm going with it. And
but what was the most, let me ask you, what was the most important message of that book?
It's interesting, looking back in retrospect, because, many different animals came for me, and all of them had a different message or symbolism that, the animals carry a message based on their characteristics, or, how they behave and so forth. I would say that the biggest message that I got actually was from the owl, because the owl showed itself for me as my life totem, or my kind of my power animal at the time. And that was really powerful for me. And what was so striking for me when the owl showed itself in the way that it did is because I've always been like an owl person. Like I've always thought owls were cool. It was like the wise old owl. They're always my favorite animal, even in like Winnie the Pooh. I love the owl. So when I knew that my life totem and my power, and one of my power animals was going to show itself to me that night, having absolutely no idea what it would be. I just knew for a variety of reasons. And the owl, and this giant owl swoops out of the woods, and he swoops right in front of my car, and he literally does a 180 with its wings spread right in front of my windshield, and then flies back into the woods to show itself to me. I was like, okay, that's insane that just happened. But that it was an owl, because really what I think the biggest thing that I got from it, besides all the other things, was the link to who I really was, to my life, the signs throughout my life of kind of tying together really where my attention already was, what my interests already were. None of this, is going to really be like, whoa, that's something I never expected. Like if you really pay attention, they say, if you want to know who you are, pay attention to who you've been, or how people see you, or what is really your interest, because the clues, the signs are all there. You are you. So probably the biggest thing I'd say in answer to that question was that one of my main power animals was an animal that I had already had such an incredible affinity with, and I couldn't tell you why, my whole life. And it was turned out to be one of my power animals.
Okay. So we're going to go back and forward here just a little bit before we move completely forward in your journey, right? So now it was in your 50s now, and it was in your 50s when you only learned empathy. And so what is empathy to you now? And why do you think and there is no goals here. There's no finish line, I don't think, for any of us, right? But why was that not present before, do you think?
Yeah, so right, why was it not present? Shoot, who knows? I don't think I really understood. I was the kind of person that, again, I was a Marine Corps sergeant, right? You just made things happen. You succeeded. I think what I realized as I got older was that I derived any self-worth that I had, for a variety of reasons, from being kind of the capable one, right? And so, I wasn't going to quit something till it killed me, because I was going to have to prove that I had value, that I was worth something. And I thought I was proving it to others, right? I thought that's how I derived my value. So I think because I approached life from the perspective from that, I just expected that other people should pull themselves up by the bootstraps and get on with life, right? And I didn't realize, and what happened with the empathy, I didn't even actually realize I didn't really have a lot of empathy until I was in, I'd say, probably the deepest part of my depression, and I was just a mess. I really was a mess. And people say, well, how are you? I'd say fine. Everybody says fine. Who really wants to know how you are? How are you? And then one day I remember I got this text from my, I call him, my alpha male cousin out in California, right? He was, big sports guy, and I never thought that he had like all these really deep feelings or whatever. And he texts me, how you doing? And I say fine. And he had been already divorced and years prior, and he said to me something like, yeah, so how are you really? And I was just like, yeah, it's a little harder than I thought, kind of thing. I gave like just a little bit of an opening. And then when he texted me back, still to this day, I'm just like blown out of the water. He texted me back, may peace find you and wrap you like a warm blanket. And I was like, what am I reading? And it hit me so hard in the heart, because on so many levels, because one, it was so kind and so loving, and I could feel it. I really could feel that love wrapping around me when I really needed it the most. But what it did for me was I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, like, I think he understands, like, he understands how I feel. And I didn't think anybody could ever understand. I didn't think anybody else could understand that, the depth of what I thought my pain was. And when I realized, like, wow, if he understands it, that means he's felt it, right? And if he's felt it, then other people must have felt this, And I was like, Kevin, it blew me out of the water. And I started looking and going, not that I'm looking at the walking wounded walking around in this world, but I really opened my eyes, and I was like, wow, other people are really struggling. And so it's not just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get on with life. It's not just, it was a relationship, get over it, so you're divorced. It was like, wow, like, other people are dealing with some really profound pain and trauma. And that's when I say, like, I learned empathy. I didn't get it before that. I honestly didn't.
No, and I've got to know. I mean, hopefully, I think I'm empathetic towards people. If they're going through a hard time, and not always. I'll say that, right? But I try to be. And I've, the more I go on this journey, the more I realize no matter what someone's doing, if it may be the most, you may think it's kind of, crazy, or it's just, they're being cruel. You don't know what other people are walking around with, do you? The baggage they walk around with that they never talk about, right? The pain that's on their back, in a sense, right? So do you think going through this journey, obviously, as I know, I've said this before too, it led you to sacred publishing. It led you to do the work that you're doing now without any of this. But also, you've got such an interesting past as well with, with the army. Obviously,
Marine,
Marine.
Marine.
Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, yeah. But
Well, if you're a Marine, you know you
yeah.
don't want to be
No, no, no,
compared to
no.
the
I don't
Army.
want to say, yeah. In Europe, it's a little bit different, but yeah, in America, yeah, yeah, that's right. A Marine of all, one of the hardest ones. Um, Obviously, when you went through the what you went through, there, did. Is it ongoing? Do you think? Do you think you've healed a lot of this now, or do you think because obviously you interview a lot of people as well, like I do. Do you think this is an ongoing process for you, where you're still, you know, going through your journey in a sense, aren't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So something that's really, I think is really important, and there's a couple words that a lot of people use kind of out in the spiritual world that don't resonate with me at all. And I'm actually also a former teacher. So I don't like the word lesson at all. I don't believe we're here to learn lessons in any way at all. I don't think that we go through this pain because we're supposed to learn some lesson. Um, and I'm on the fence with the word heal. I don't have a better word for heal, right? So instead of a lesson, I know we're here for to have experiences, and the experiences are for an expansion of our awareness. It really is about the expanding awareness. So even when people talk about the spiral, it's not like, you keep spiraling because you haven't learned your lesson yet and you're still on the spiral. It's that every time, if you want to use the spiral, which is a valid spiritual symbol to use, but you're spiraling out. And so you're expanding it every time. It may seem that you're having a similar experience. You're still coming at it or from it with an expanded awareness, with a body of experiences that your perception or perspective has shifted. And hopefully it has expanded to a higher consciousness or a more positive outlook in some way, even if it's more empathy, more love, directed inward or directed outward. So are we ever done? No, I mean, I think it would be arrogant for anybody to say they have it all figured out and, and go to them because they're going to coach you or heal you or do any of that crazy stuff. So
Well, coach is
no,
is coaching another trigger word then? Is coaching?
I don't like coaching
No.
either. Yes, I don't like lessons. I don't like coaching, and I'm on the fence about healing because for me, it's really about. It's about expansion. It's about shifting. It really is. There are light years between tiny little movements, and I think that. And I think one of the things that, and this is so important, and so if I just can make this one point because it's just really, we're missing a really big point on this because a lot of the languaging around things is been and has traditionally been very punitive or from a very controlling perspective, right? And so if we think we're this small, we think we have all this to learn, if we think we have so much to heal, we're not even getting out of the gate, right? I mean, where the heck are we going if we just are that small? But if we don't use that languaging, if we really understand that that is a controlling, patriarchal, punitive languaging, and what it's about is that we truly are divine beings, right? And we're not looking out there necessarily maybe for all this help, but that within ourselves are our own divine light, and we are expanding through our experiences, our knowledge, and our consciousness. We're making great progress instead of I got to keep repeating this lesson till I learn it.
Yeah, no, I like that. Looking at what we go through in life as an experience. What experience did you get from that? Yeah, that is a Yeah, and I think as well that this whole spirituality, or this whole idea that obviously a lot of people move. I've said this in previous interviews. Are moving away from religion and coming into spirituality. But really, what is spirituality? We're a soul having a human experience, and do I know anything more than that from all the interviews I've done over these years? I can't say it's for sure. All I know is I know that I know I'm more than my body. I know. Where do you stand with the I am, in a sense, as well? Is that something that you've sort of delved into?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can go to even to our Facebook group and or you can even go to my website and is sacredstoriesmedia.com and sacredstoriespublishing.com. But it says, I am you and you are me. I am you and you are me. Let's write our sacred stories together. So, I mean, the essence of who we are is the I am presence. I mean, that we could talk about that in a very, mainstream spiritual way to some of the highest consciousness there is. But what I want to say to what you just said, though, which when you said it, I just, it was one of those aha moments. It's like, yes, like honestly, a lot of people may have moved from religious backgrounds, right? The punitive patriarchal backgrounds, but look at the languaging they moved into in spirituality. They learned into this. I need to learn my lessons or I will continue to repeat them. And they start pulling in these divine laws. It's like pop spirituality, the law of attraction. I'm going to attract to me, right? Basically, my thoughts and all that stuff. So I'm gonna attract the law of attraction. They use that, and it freaks people out because people get nervous and they say, well, what if I have negative thoughts? I'm attracting negativity, right? I mean, it's really kind of counter productive. Or they say the law of manifestation, and they're going to say, I'm going to manifest what I think. I mean, I have people say to me all the time, like they're freaked out by spirituality because if they have a negative thought, they think they're going to create a negative thing. And I said, we should be so powerful that all we got to do is think something. I said, everyone would be skinny, rich, and beautiful. So, like, is that true? No. So you can't just think something and it happened. There are multiple divine laws that are acting in concert with each other, and it is on a much higher consciousness. And we have to bring a much higher consciousness than this immediate law of manifestation or law of attraction. I mean, to me, that's pop spirituality. So we moved from the patriarchal religion of sin and original sin, and we have to ask for forgiveness, into we keep having to repeat our lessons because we keep doing everything wrong, and we have to learn all this stuff. And I'm like, oh dear God, like, can we just get off that hamster wheel and stop with there's always something wrong with us. We always have to fix something, or we can't even have any peace of mind because God forbid we think of negative thought, our lives are going to go to crap. Like Kevin, none of it makes any sense. And so what's important to me and where my work is going and in Sacred Stories and so forth is really about giving ourselves a little bit of a break here, but is about, again, the expansion of consciousness, and it's an awareness that we're opening into, and it's a whole different way of looking at things. It's a whole different consciousness that we hold than repeating lessons and fixing
well,
ourselves.
there are many people in this field. I mean, you had a crash course coming into this field, right? Like we all do, in the sense that when you had that experience that you went through, which was your trigger to go further and deeper into something new in your life, which is what you've done, right? And to really figure out, well, who the hell am I really, right? Is there more to this? What is my contribution when I've left this whatever the idea of the I am brings you to look deeper into yourself, right? But where is the discernment in all this?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you've got this wonderful media company that is flourishing and that's building up right now pretty quickly. How do you bring discernment into this field, into your section of the field, in a sense?
Yeah. So thank you for asking me that. I think discernment is a ongoing process, and I think that sometimes our discernment is better than others. What I've come to really try to learn to trust is kind of how is the resonance I feel with others, how I feel in my body when I'm hear things or speak to people or in different people's presence. And it's not just like, yeah, I got a good feeling about that person, but truly, honestly, that really is at the heart, right? That's that intuitive sense. That's that innate knowing. That's that resonance, that energetic resonance, right? Because if we say everything is frequency, if we really want to take it to where spirit and science meet, then where are we resonating, or how are we, energetically meeting the information of the other person? And not simply because I'm on your show. I'm on your show because I resonate with you. Like I get a good vibe. I feel when you talk, I really feel like you're coming from a genuine place and you're doing good work. And I feel that in my body. And so that is how I try to discern, so what do we publish? What type of courses do we produce? Who do we work with? It comes to, how the resonance with the person and their work.
I got you. Okay. Okay. Now I could go from there to other things, but I just want to reverse still, right? That past, that PAST, right? Because it makes us what we are. It really does. But I mean, obviously, it feels to me that nutcrack, that event that you went through, right, was so transformational. And we all go through this. I think that's the reason why I go back to it. But what was childhood like for you as well? Was that an easy one, a difficult one? As did this kind of breakthrough that you went through bring up things from the past as well?
Yes. So it kind of makes me smile because, sometimes it's like, I don't really want to talk about that, but I will. So for me, it was interesting because even in my book, I say, like I was so blown out of the water by my response of how like bad my response was, or how deep my response was to the divorce and the really how I just spiraled. Because I said, I think I had a pretty good childhood. My parents loved me. I mean, I couldn't point and say, oh, I was abused, or I was homeless, or I was beaten, or I was any of those things. But it's interesting. So what I realized I was doing though is, we kind of compare traumas. And so it's almost more difficult for people who don't have really profound physical experiences, maybe to be able to own that or have any empathy for ourselves or compassion for ourselves, because we think, well, it wasn't that bad. We're kind of being a baby. We shouldn't be feeling so bad. Other people have it worse. And so I want to say to everybody out there that, doesn't really give themselves the self-love or the compassion for themselves because they think other people should have it worse and they shouldn't own maybe their own trauma, that you should own your trauma. And your trauma is probably maybe deeper than maybe what you may realize. And it might not even be from this life, in the sense of maybe triggers that are coming in that have then been compounded. So what I realized in my own journey, and it's taken me a long time, honestly, to kind of own up to, because again, a lot of things seem a little cliche, and I don't like to, dive into things if they don't make sense to me. But it was the idea of truly more for me, it was like almost like a lack of nurturing, right? And so when you talk about healing the inner child, or the good mother, bad mother, and not necessarily my mother, so it's just really important. It's not necessarily even the physical mother, it's the child. And they say, what do they say, up to age 7? And I realized, even when I look back at my life, at age 7, I completely disconnected with spirit, with myself, with so many things. I had such a lack of nurturing, I used to cry a lot as a child. There's so many pictures of me crying, and I was always told, stop crying, you're too sensitive and all this. And I'd be like, I don't know why, I just feel so bad. I don't know why. And I was just always told, well, there must be something wrong with you. Stop crying. And, or, I grew up in the generation where they'd say, you're crying, like, stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about, and you're like, oh, I can't even own my crying. I didn't get the, honey, why are you feeling bad? I'd get the stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. And what I realized is my trauma was really, truly a lack of nurturing, and not necessarily because my parents didn't love me. It was just for whatever reason, it's just maybe how they were raised. I don't know. At age 7, I gained a tremendous amount of weight. I turned into this like really overweight child. And back in the 60s, like, people weren't really overweight. I was really overweight. And I realized that it was, looking back, it really was part of this complete disconnect that I had going on at that point, because of the trauma that I experienced. Was this lack of nurturing, was this feeling so bad and no one trying to help me feel better. So yes. So I would say that everything, absolutely, without a doubt, if people will want to go deep enough and be honest enough, they're going to find it in their childhood, the roots of it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that as well. And okay, going forward now, obviously as well. Now, obviously with your career as a businesswoman as well, I want to say, obviously that's kind of got you to the point where you are now, because obviously, you're embracing that side, to take you where you have been with the publishing company, the courses, everything else that you're doing right now as well. So, I mean, there's nothing wasted, is there, that you've been through? Everything that you've gone through was taking you to, on the journey. So, there are no mistakes, just experiences. Shall we just go back to that? That it's true, isn't it?
All experience.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
which is but it served you really to where you are. So what would you say of, obviously, would you say obviously it's your birthday this month as well? You told me that off air. What is the most important thing up to your point in your life right now that you could share with us that you've learned?
I would say the biggest thing that I've learned is that there's not one thing. And one thing doesn't necessarily have more value than others. I think what happens is people get really tripped up because everyone's looking for their purpose, like the purpose, the thing. And I would say that just to exactly what you just said, all of it is valuable and all of them are purposes. We have multiple purposes. I've had a purpose of serving my country. I've had a purpose of being in corporate America. I was a teacher. I'm still a mom. I have a publishing company. There's more to come, right? So we have many purposes, and all of them are valuable. And so the biggest thing that I'd say I'd probably learned from everything is there's not one thing, and people will get sidetracked, and they'll actually almost, they'll impede any progress they could be making or even enjoying themselves, because they're so focused on having to find the thing, the purpose, the person, the whatever. And I'd say it's many. There's many.
It's so true what you're saying. Or sometimes we just don't want to go where the energy is taking us. If the energy is taking us to where we are right now, that's where we are right now. We're not saying that you can't change that, because of course you can. You can actually, there isn't much you can't do with the tools you've got around you. Well, for us in the first world, maybe, in other countries, maybe the souls are a bit more, it's a different way of thinking, isn't it? It's a different karmic thing going on. But where we are right now, and others watching this, it's normally us that block us from what we really could do with our lives. But there's impatience, there's not going with the flow, and there's probably a few other things which I'm not naming there that maybe you can fill the blanks in. But do you know what I mean? We want it now, don't we? We want what we want right now, and we're not prepared to see through the journey, as sometimes, are we?
Absolutely. And I think we also, again, we get in our heads too much, right? And so when you're talking, what sometimes comes to me if we look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And so, and you just talked about, well, people in the first world. So people in, if people are just looking to survive, right? They're just looking for shelter to feed themselves or safety. They're not that concerned with, am I fulfilling my spiritual life goal, or, all this stuff that we make ourselves crazy about, right? I'll stay up at night thinking, am I going to accomplish what I came here to accomplish? And it can drive you crazy. But if we look at it from a different perspective and we say like, wow, well, how freaking amazingly blessed am I that I have a home, I have food, I am safe, and I have the luxury of going through all this emotional turmoil I'm going through to expand my awareness and to worry about I'm even going to accomplish what I've come to accomplish. So it's really perspective, right? It's all about, for me, it's perspective and coming back to really trying to look at things with a little bit more clarity.
Yes, absolutely. Now, one thing I've learned about you very quickly, obviously coming from the business world, is that you're not about competition. You've sort of cracked the competition nut in a sense. You're more about collaboration, and you did say that you'll only kind of work with people that you've got that resonance with, that it feels right to do. Spiritual business, and I don't know if I like that word spiritual, to put those two words together, but the idea. But we are both, myself and you, are in the business of kind of spirituality in a sense. The best you can be. The best you. What the courses that you do, which we're just about to get into as well, right? But you really do come from the space of collaboration. How important is that? And what is the future of that? Do you think? Is it the future?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I had to crack the competition nut. I'm a very competitive person, and I think the world of social media can really be very detrimental mentally and emotionally to people, because you can look out there and everybody's living and dying on likes or views or so forth. And I would when I was first starting, I would look around and say, wait, I have all this really important information or all this really good stuff. Why is so-and-so who's talking pop spirituality have all those likes or something, and I would I felt like I would almost become almost an envious, which was just even less of who I wanted to be because of, and I think that social media almost can breed that based on, what happens out there. So it took a lot. It really did. I had to work on the competition nut. Honest to God. And I do think that I finally cracked it. And the way that I believe helped me to crack it was because what's very important to me, and I think would like to share with everyone, is it's the we consciousness. It's not about my personal journey or my personal success or your journey, Kevin, or so forth. Our personal soul journeys and our collective soul journeys are in parallel. We're so tightly linked, and we there's no way not to for them not to work together and impact each other. So I can't compete with you. If I'm competing with you, I'm honestly competing with myself. And that, it sounds, kind of like, really, that just sounds good. But no, it's absolutely true. And so in addition to, we couldn't compete if we wanted to, it's counterproductive. If we really want to step into the we consciousness and we really want and care about anything outside of our own personal journeys, then we are on the collective journey. And then we can look at others or hopefully look at others and see them as people that we can collaborate with. Out of one comes many. And if we don't have a resonance with them, maybe we don't feel a good vibe or whatever, we can still bless them, wish them well, and hope they do well, because it's a big world out there and there's a lot of problems.
Well, yeah, and we mentioned, I mentioned the word, we both did in the end, of being of service, right? But, just because people aren't in the spiritual business, they are being of service to their friends, to their families, we're not here to be of. I mean, we're not here to be of service to the whole world. Do you know what I mean? We can only do what we can do, and and that's a debate as well. Some people will debate, well, should it be a service of self first rather than of other people? If you put yourself first, is that putting other people first, and vice versa? Have you had to sort of, dodge that bit? Not dodge it, but have you had to face that? Sorry, that's what I mean, not dodge it.
I think the biggest thing that I've had to face that I think that is really important to maybe just state is that people will say in the world of consciousness or the world of spirituality, that if you were truly spiritual, it wouldn't be a business, or you wouldn't be making money from it or something like that. And I say honestly, we need to make the most money. For me, it's not about how much money do we make because I want to just be I want to be financially successful. I want to be financially successful so that I have the resources to affect positive change on a global level. And so we need to be successful. So the businesses that you're in or the business that I'm in addition to the work that we can do in sharing, books and recordings and courses and things that share knowledge and consciousness that people can read or take and have their own experience with, the more successful that people in the world of consciousness are, the more resources they have to affect positive change. And that's what it's all about for me. So it's not about should we be successful, it's how successful can we be, and then what can we do with it.
And in all this talk we're having right now, this is not the avoidance of a human experience. This is the embracing of the whole goddamn thing. Do you know what I mean? Just because we're in this business does not mean I don't have a love for all things movies or the news or whatever it may be. Do you know what I mean? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Yeah, I am not in. Trying to like wear the white robes and get the harps out and stuff. I want my human experience, and that's one thing that a lot of the spiritual field it's a tendency to avoid that. Do you know what I mean? That they've got to be this person that they're not.
Yeah, well, I like to have a good time. That sounded weird, but it's interesting. I have a couple daughters. They're in their 20s, and they say to me, not that they don't necessarily like a bunch of people that I introduce them to, but they can't relate to them because they can only talk about topics that are very, 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 very uber spiritual. And they look at me and they think, they probably think I'm normal enough because I'm their mom and, they know me as their mom, but I am very mainstream. I mean, like I said, up to the time I was 50, I was about as mainstream as you could get. And so I think it's important that it's not one or the other. And the people that are very spiritual and that's their passion and that's wonderful. But I think it's very important that there's others that are also people can relate to. Mainstream is who we don't need to preach to the choir.
No, absolutely not. I mean, it could just be like whatever job you've got. Do you know what I mean? I mean, how much are you loving towards yourself in that job? How kind have you been? What have you done today that you're proud of, in a sense, that was a nice thing to do? Do you know what I mean? We're all struggling, and I think what we're trying to do in this business is to see the deeper meaning behind why we're here, why we go through certain things, and just to help make sense from a different perspective. And you know what? If none of it was true, when I pass away, if none of this is what I've spent, my time since I left uni on, if none of it was true, you know what? I lived a better life because of it. I at least left a better impact in the world from a bit more of a stance of love then none of it matters to me if it wasn't true. It'd be too late anyway. Do you know what I mean? But just to come from to try to make sense of it is very helpful. Do you know what I mean? Like where do we go to when we cross over? Yeah, and what does that knowledge of having that help in the present moment for someone that's struggling?
Mm-hmm. When I was graduating seminary, and everyone was saying, trying to decide what kind of ministry they were going to have, and could they take the proverbial leap and leave their jobs and just go be spiritual or just minister to others. And people were really struggling because there's real financial concerns as well. There's life concerns, or there's, you have families, or you have things you have to do. And what really struck me, and what our teachers at seminary would talk about all the time, was living our spirituality, living our consciousness. So it's not like I'm a minister, right? But I don't put on my minister hat and go be a minister, like they say on Sundays or something like that in my job. It's kind of embodying and living the consciousness of who we are. So in everything that you do, in what you choose to eat, right? And a whole conversation on that, what you're choosing to eat, or how you, like you said, how you choose how kind you can be to others. They said to some people, for example, if they work in corporate America, or they're working in an office, or they, have what they consider just their day job. If you're a secretary, be the very best secretary that you could ever be. Bring your spirituality in all aspects of your life. Bring the consciousness of doing good or being good, in the sense of that, and have it be so a part of you that it's not like you have your spiritual practice. So in the morning, I get up and I do my 20 minutes of meditation, and I've done my spiritual stuff, and then you go on your way. You embody your beliefs, you embody your consciousness throughout everything. And I think if everyone can do even that, just a little bit, the monumental shift in this world, it would be incredible.
Absolutely, and more peace within ourselves, and then that ripples out to other people. If you forget changing the world, but changing oneself is a great place to start. It really is. Thank you for sharing what you just shared there. Now, I want, obviously, let's continue this talk and journey into sacred stories, because that's really important as well, for that we talk about what you're doing as well. So, I mean, how many books have you published right now, in a sense?
We have a few dozen books that we've published. We have children's books through actually teens and adults. We have fiction, nonfiction. The way that we look is it positive messaging? Is it a higher consciousness? Is there information, that others can use? Some of them people would consider self-care. Some are more intellectual. Some are some really great spiritual fiction stories. It's all of it.
And okay, so you do a number of different things at this company as well. Now, so obviously, if you want to go self-published, you help with that process as well. You can do, because obviously you've been through the journey, so you must have learned so much, right, from the very big, beginning part of doing your first book to where you are now. So there's a lot of people that may be watching this as well that be thinking that everyone's got a book inside them, haven't they?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So when I said I had to download, I woke up and I wrote for 4 days. My heart was wide open. I mean, I was on my spiritual journey. I couldn't get that book published fast enough, because I thought I literally thought I took the proverbial leap, left my career, had newly divorced, 2 kids that are staring down college. They've both graduated since then, thank God. And college's tuition is paid. But I took the proverbial leap, and I went to one of the largest self-publishing consciousness houses out there. I got completely taken, spent about $15,000 on the hope and the prayer, and them telling me, I'm going to be the next big author. Thinking Oprah was going to have me on her show like within a month, and just saying like, oh my God, of course, like everybody's gonna, want to read my story. And, so haven't met Oprah yet, but one day I will. And was like, what the heck just happened? I don't even understand what's happening right now. Why isn't my book a multi-billion-dollar success? And why is this not happening and that happening? I thought I had it all figured out. And what I realized is I took the proverbial leap, right? And but I had a plan. I took a leap, but it really wasn't a leap of faith, because I had it planned out. And then the plan, they say we plan, God laughs, right? None of that happened. but I learned at the knees of the masters, honestly, and I say that all the time. I was so taken in the consciousness publishing world, my head couldn't stop spinning. And my second book was picked up by a traditional publisher, small traditional publisher, another very bad experience. And I was like, something, what the heck is happening? I thought these were spiritual people. I thought I was an intelligent person. How am I keep having I'm just getting taken and taken and taken. And I'm like, well, somebody has to do it better. There has to be more opportunities for people. And there are some spiritual publishers out there, publishers that publish books of consciousness that have integrity. But there's not enough. There's not enough opportunities. And so Sacred Stories was kind of born from my knowing that that I could provide more opportunities. And if I could, then I would. And so, yes, we provide self-publishing, hybrid publishing, and we do traditional publishing as well.
Now, obviously, thank you for that. And of course, all this is on your website. And you do podcasts as well. You're the host of a number of the podcasts. I think all of the podcasts from what I've seen.
We have a shared stream. We actually have a number of different shows on one stream, and I also have 2 of my own podcasts.
Okay.
Yes, so
okay, we're linking that all below. Now, one of the interesting things that you're doing as well is you're looking at conventional authors and turning their books into courses. Now, what is it about the courses? Would you say what is a benefit of doing courses?
The reason that we have an online course division called Sacred You, and the reason we started that was to provide people an opportunity to experience information in a different way, and do it where they could actually learn instead of just paying somebody, to heal them or to do whatever for them that they were looking for. And I'm a forever student, so I just love education. So what we've done with courses, some of the authors, we like to bring their books to life through courses, and then others are to share, information. And so we have a number of courses of all different kinds on Sacred You, from shamanism courses to a course about being an empath, to a course on Mary Magdalene and the divine goddesses. I mean, they just go on and on. And so we love courses because people can learn and they can experience, and have the experience that resonates with them.
Thank you very much for that. And obviously, we're going to collaborate as well. And people, if they use the code MORE, MOORE23, they will get a discount on all the courses on your site. So if you just tell people how they can do that, they just go to the website.
Yeah, so the website is learn.sacredstoriesmedia.com. Learn.sacredstoriesmedia.com, or you can just go to sacredstoriesmedia.com and you can go to the courses link. And Kevin, since we made the code MORE23, we'll take 23% off all courses on the site.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed having you on, and there's so much I can see where this work is taking you. But what's your sort of vision for the future? Do you have one, or are you just sort of going where the energy takes you right now?
See, that's the question that could keep me up at night. My vision for the future is that Sacred Stories Media, Sacred Stories Publishing obviously continues to be successful, but that there's something beyond Sacred Stories, and again that goes back to the we consciousness. And so there's a greater work to affect positive change in this world that we'll be a part of. I don't know what that is yet. It's interesting, but I know it's coming, and I know that Sacred Stories will be able to either foundationally provide will be the link to the next great adventure, but it has to do with the work that can help others on a larger scale.
I see the change. I mean, obviously, I've been doing this talk show for a few years now, and I see more and more people, getting into this work as well, and it's incredible to see it transform. What would you say then? And excuse me if I've kind of sort of asked you this in different ways, but what would you say, Patricia, is the most important message of your work?
It's really important, the consciousness that we hold, in everything. And it's really important, again, that we're aware that it's the expansion of awareness that we are interested in. You know what I mean? And just to be aware, truly, honestly, to be aware, to go back to what you were saying, Kevin, in our daily lives and in everything that we do, our actions do have there is a ripple effect. There is truly a we consciousness at play. And what we do does have a tremendous impact on others. And it does matter. And so the biggest thing that I would hope people would take from this conversation is that they matter and their actions matter, and hopefully they will continue to hold a higher consciousness, or seek to hold a higher consciousness in all things.
Absolutely. Well, look, Patricia, just thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been really fun.